The reason I knew about B.B. King was because of him.
Oh.
I mean, I was reading about the great blues men in interviews with Eric Clapton when I was a kid. I mean, Eric was a huge hero and influence for me, and yeah, he mentioned B.B. King and talked about him and Albert and all, Freddie, but a lot about B.B. And then I realized, wait, B.B. King. I read an ad in the paper. He's playing in New Iberia. It's 20 minutes from my home. And so I went down and heard B.B. King in this little Chitlin Circuit club back when he was still doing that, and met him. And
wow.
So that's a great example of how back then, it was way before the internet, obviously, and where information was so immediately accessible. Well, back then, you wanted to hear somebody. If you heard about them, you get in the car and drive and go find them. And we used to go to Texas and drive around different states, when we could, me and my friends, just to here's these great players. And so he taught me that. Eric taught me that. And that was a great life lesson for me.
Welcome to the Better Each Day podcast radio show with Bruce Hilliard. Today and every day, reaching out for innovative ideas in every way. Today's show is brought to you by your future. It comes with a lifetime guarantee. Make a better each day now, baby. Better in every way.
Of course, Sonny was talking about the great Eric Clapton. Sonny Landreth has performed with the best, including Mark Knopfler, Jimmy Buffett, Kenny Loggins, John Hyatt, Marshall Crenshaw, Johnny Winter, and John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. I asked about a song Sonny wrote called Jukebox Mama, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, it took too long to write the songs. It took me like 3 years to do that album because of that. But, man, I had fun. And that was sort of a one that kind of the idea was left over. We did the album. This was some years later, but it was called The Road We're On, and I got all inspired for that album because it was a return to the blues for me, and that really got inspired about it, and the songs just really kind of poured out of me for once, and we were down to needing one other tune, and I think I was doing the photo shoot for the album with my friend Jack Spencer, who's the great photographer. He's world renowned now. He's a big shot, but we kind of came up together, and I was looking. He had this shot of me standing, and I'm looking down at a mud puddle, and there's a reflection. And I don't know, it just hit me. And I had the idea of, we were going to go to a local little juke joint, and he wanted to get, my art director and girlfriend, Megan Barra, wanted to get a shot of that jukebox in this little joint out in the country. And I started thinking about that, and that's what inspired, I just came up with a title, Jukebox Mama, and I started hearing the chorus in my head. And that's happened a lot, where I've said this before, it's like you're writing the song from the inside out, and you come up with the refrain or the chorus, and then you go, well, what would inspire that? What would inspire the title Jukebox Mama? And then you come up with an idea for a couple of lines of a verse, and then that inspires the next verse, and so on. So it's a process, but and there's no guarantees, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, it's worth the ride for sure.
This magic box is full of lights and all the songs that'll run. Got lots of change, your aim is true, just press and play. a world of trouble outside the door. For a little while we'll forget we know. But you can put a smile back on my lips and just snap your fingers and shake your hips. 'Cause I love the way you make you move when you pull me into a rhythm for the blues. Jukebox mama, jukebox mama, jukebox mama, give me rhythm for the blues. Woo!
That one worked. Yeah, it's great. There's a video of you playing with Eric Clapton, and maybe there are several, but it's the one that pops up first on YouTube. Where are you playing? It looks like an ocean of people.
That's in outside of Chicago in Toyota Park. We did two of them. I did all of that's the Crossroads Festival that he established, and I'm sure you know, but the whole idea behind it was to sort of call to arms of his, what he called his favorite guitar players, and then to take all the money from the proceeds. Everyone dedicated their time, and all the money from the proceeds for the tickets and the sales of the CD later and or DVD or whatever, all goes to his clinic in Antigua for drug and alcohol rehabilitation. It's an incredible place.
That's cool.
And so it's a really noble cause. Top production, the works to take great care of you, and it established a real community vibe between all the players. I just love that. I mean, it was some of them were already friends of mine, and others I hadn't met. But what was so great is that he liked having me play first, and he considered that an honor, as did I, to sort of kick the whole thing off. And what was great about that was he would come out and play with us, number one, and number two, then I got to hear all the other groups, and these are like the best in the world, some of the best players in the world, and to get to know them and sort of establish that as a kind of our tribe, I think was really special. I sure miss doing them. The last one we did in New York City at Madison Square Gardens, and it was great in terms of all of the technical end of it. But I kind of miss that backstage vibe we had outside of Chicago, and I think those were pretty. They were all great, but those were a little kind of extra special for me.
Very inspiring. I think Eric Clapton would probably say he was influenced a lot by Southern American music.
Oh, sure. I mean, he was the reason I knew about B.B. King was because of him.
Oh,
I mean, I was reading about the great bluesmen in interviews with Eric Clapton when I was a kid. I mean, Eric was a huge hero and influence for me, he mentioned B.B. King and talked about him and Albert and all, Freddie, but a lot about B.B. And then I realized, wait, B.B. King. I read an ad in the paper. He's playing in New Iberia. It's 20 minutes from my home. And so I went down and heard B.B. King in this little Chitlin Circuit club back when he was still doing that, and met him. And
wow.
So that's a great example of how back then, it was way before the internet, obviously, and where information was so immediately accessible. Well, back then, you wanted to hear somebody. If you heard about them, you get in the car and drive and go find them. And we used to go to Texas and drive around different states, when we could, me and my friends, just to here's these great players. And so he taught me that. Eric taught me that. And that was a great life lesson for me. So to finally get to work with him, and here again, he's ringing the bell for all these players, and like Mr. Hubert Sumlin, I got to be good friends with him, and it was, in a way, it was like it completed the circle for me, and kind of brought it all back to home for me.
It must be an honor to play with that, that quality of players and whatnot, and you're definitely,
man, it's the best. I mean, it's the greatest affirmation there is, and as a musician, right, and then too, to get to work with them, or if I record with them in the studio and to see how they work, and you always hope some other cosmic dust rubs off on it somehow.
Yeah.
And then to become friends, that's just that's a little something extra, lan'yap, that's just priceless. And Eric and I went and we had dinner one night in New Orleans. We were both played the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. I play it every year, but it was a big deal for him to come and play it. And we I was initially they tried to set it up to where I played before him and so forth, but that didn't work out. And anyway, we just wanted to hang out, so we went to Commander's Palace and set all that up. And it was awesome. I mean, just to get to hang and enjoy dinner and talk about guitars and amps and stuff. And he'd tell me old stories from back in the day, and it was really cool. So that's the part of it that I love the most.
So music has been good to you.
It's been great to me, and it's the value fulfillment. In particular, even if I just played as an instrumentalist, but the added experience of writing my own songs and taking that out on the road, because it's kind of a cyclical thing too, where you get an idea for a song, you write the song, then you go into the studio and it's time to do that, and you record this album with your band. Then it's time to go out on the road and play for people. And then while you're out there, you're getting new ideas for songs, and it starts all over again. And at one point, it all becomes a bit synonymous. I like that. And that's that's when I feel like all the cylinders are firing. And because to be honest with you, left to my own devices, I'd just sit on my couch and watch TV and drink red wine, hang out with my little dog. So
you get the itch.
Yank me out of that. Put me back to work.
Have you
or
ever?
Also, I'll do that with my guitar. I'll just sit there and watch TV and just play guitar. I'll do that all day.
You could probably play in your sleep too.
It's best to have a way to plug in that in such a way to actually have something to account for it in a creative way.
Have you ever written and recorded a song and then took it out on the road and played it and then thought, boy, I'd like to take that back in the studio and redo it?
Well, that's a good question. I would say more so adding ideas to it and on another version, because what happens is, and I think pretty much there are a lot of musicians who would tell you the same thing. If you write a song and you go into the studio and record it, really, it's once you get out on the road that it begins to have a life of its own. Then better ideas come up. It gets more developed. I mean, there are songs in our set now that we've been playing for a long, long time. And those songs that last that long is because they just seem to have a life of their own. You know what I mean? They just kept evolving. And it may be more in the department of nuance, but it's something a little different each night. I've never. I think what more for me would be, for example, Congo Square. There's like 3 different versions I've recorded now, and that's a good example of how the song is standing the test of time. And as the years go by, then there've been different versions and changes with it, and the album we recorded, not this, the most recent, the live album, but the one before, was pretty much the theme. It was returned back to the blues as well, but also about taking old blues songs that I grew up with that had influenced me, and the realization that as I grew as a musician and as I came up with new ideas and new techniques, I would bring those back into these old songs. So the way that I learned the song originally and the way it is wound up is pretty much a lifetime of me being on the road and playing music. It reflects that, and that was a beautiful lesson for me. I'd never quite thought of it that way. So I thought what would be cool is to go in and record some of those songs that had really hit, had a major impact with me, and had that experience with those songs, and then use those songs to inspire me to write 5 new tunes, and then put the 2 together. So here are these classic blues songs that influenced me, and then here are these songs that that led to that, and that was a really cool experience. So I think that's kind of, just gives you an idea of how it's not just a matter of coming up with an idea and that's it. A really good idea will lead to other ones. And I think that's the case with those songs as well.
What's one more song that has a really cool backstory to it that I can play later on?
Well, that's kind of a tough question, but so. I'll tell you one. Well, I'll tell you one in the profound department would be Great Gulf Wind, which is a song that it's on the South of I-10 album. And it's a song that I was real close to my grandmother and my grandparents, my parents and my grandparents. And my grandmother, my dad's mom, his dad had already passed away, and then his mom was ill, and she was in her early 90s, and we knew it wasn't going to be long. And I was driving to go see her, and I came up with the imagery of the song. And the idea being that we're all going to see each other again, that there's this continuum about that. And I got the idea from, I was walking through a cemetery, and I thought about what would it be like to for a person who's dealing with loss, and then you walk into the cemetery, and all of a sudden there's an epitaph that speaks to you. You reading something on a gravestone, and in fact, it's enlightening, and it becomes uplifting because it has its own affirmation that affects your not only your current situation dealing with loss, but how you view life from the vantage of a bigger picture. And so anyway, I'm on my way to see her, and I just started writing the song. And when she passed away, I went to the room and I sang it to her. And then at the funeral in this little bitty church in Oakland, Mississippi. Man, this is up in northern Mississippi. It's a tiny, tiny little town, and my dad was raised there. He was raised in the same house. It's really the only house that was always there, because we moved around and my other grandparents moved around. But that house was always there my whole life. So just down the street is this little church, and I played the song. My parents were there, and my aunts and uncles and nephews and everyone, family was there, and I played the song, and that was the first time I ever actually played the song in public.
Night, walk alone through markers made of stone, after the loss that had deepened, when something caught my eye, words on the shrine, full moon aglow, I could read them. The delta moon is a lantern over you, like a porch light hung forever. It will be left on, 'cause we're always going home, and we'll meet up again on a great gulf wind. We'll meet up again on a great gulf wind. Over I read, with a whisper in my head. It hit me like a chill I was meant to have, waiting for me there to comfort and to share the meaning I found in this epitaph. The delta moon is a lantern over you, like a porch light hung forever. It will be left on, 'cause we're always going home, and we'll meet up again on a great gulf wind. We'll meet up Back through the gate, I left that restful place, taking with me a new peace of mind. So when the loss is profound, for those no longer around, I just remember to look up at night. The Delta moon is a lantern over you, like a porch light hanging forever. It will be left on, 'cause we're always going home, and we'll meet up again on a great gulf wind. We'll meet up again on a great gulf wind. We'll meet up again on a great gulf wind.
So, needless to say, it has a lot of depth and meaning for me. But that's a great example of how life experiences are reflected in music and art, and how significant that is. And those are the life-changing events that stay with us.
And how the creative mind can culminate the whole thing and put it together into something. That's amazing.
Well, and you hope that the thing you hope for is that then that, and truly, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and have told me that had such meaning for them and helped them through the similar situation. You know, it could be a parent, it could be a brother or sister, or anyone in your life. It's the same thing, and that's probably the greatest reward there is for me as a songwriter and as a musician, and to have people come up and share their stories with me. Yeah, it's really something, you know.
That's so great. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been great. I could talk to you all day long. You're a very fascinating person.
Well, I appreciate it, Bruce, and wish you all the best with the show and all the work you do, man. It's just awesome. It's very much appreciated.
It's the funnest thing there is, and I love music as you do. You're playing in Chicago, I believe, next, correct?
Oh yeah, we've several shows there coming up. Yeah.
Well,
are you in the area? Is that where you are?
No, I'm in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
yeah, we played Seattle already.
Oh, and I missed it. So, but I'll be watching out for you.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
We'll be back, man. It's a regular for us. We're probably back at the Triple Door with my band. So
Triple Door is a good venue.
It sure is. Well, cool, bud. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. All right, Sonny. We'll talk later. Right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Better Each Day podcast radio show with Bruce Hilliard. We'll be back with a new horizon, but until then, honor the future. It comes with a lifetime guarantee.
And we're all just trying to make the next day a bit better.